Devil, my friend. Fashion. Things to wear. Possibly faces covered, but more importantly, covering up the bodies. Merch. We have that now. We are very, very excited to announce that Vampire and the Devil have partnered with our friends at Rock and Horror Apparel. They are now taking care of the actual merch, the exclusive merch for the Vampire and Devil podcast, modeled by our very sexy devil right here.
Oh, yeah.
But we have all kinds of goodies to share with you.
Got the hoodies, we got some shirts, we got some tanks coming up, we got some booty shorts, we got all the stuff you want to wear from the Vampire and Devil podcast, thanks to Rock and Horror.
Horns up, fangs out. Devil, my friend, not that it's not always there, but you've got red on you. Whether it be your ever so bountiful complexion, or maybe a little bit in that glorious Vampire and Devil logo, available on multiple merch items through rockandhorror.com. Alphabets of horror, my good friend. Absolutely. We have made our way to S. And courtesy of the Fangs and Infernos, Shaun of the Dead. Duking it out, man, and squeaking out the one vote victory. But yes, Shaun of the Dead in discussion.
Yeah, it was a pretty decent, it started off and, I was kind of happy because there was a little bit of love for Something Wicked, This Way Comes, which was pretty much my favorite. Other than Dumbo, which is, I know, out of all movies that people go, what? The devil's favorite Disney movie is Dumbo? What? That makes no sense. Well, yeah, that's my favorite, animated Disney film. My favorite Disney film of all time, live action, is Something Wicked, This Way Comes. So I was pretty joyful that there was a few votes and it was in the running for about 15 seconds, and then all of a sudden, the love of Shaun of the Dead and Kevin Bacon's freaking little tale of horror, duking it out the whole entire time. So it was like, oh yeah, cool, man. We're gonna, it's gonna be a little bit of love, but it's kind of funny though because it's a lot of these, lately these 2000 to 2012 movies have kind of been coming back in. That's usually 80s and 90s movies that get a lot of the love for most of the stuff that we talk about. So the last couple movies have been in that, that 2000 to 2012 kind of range. So it's gonna be cool, and who doesn't like talking about Shaun of the Dead? I mean, it's got to be probably one of the greatest horror comedies out there. So I was kind of expecting it to blow away. I figured, if we had 20 votes, it'd be like 17 for that, maybe one a Stir of Echoes and two a Stir of Echoes and something else. So I figured Shaun of the Dead was kind of rein in and beat everybody. But I was kind of surprised that Stir of Echoes was giving it a run for its money. So I mean, that's a possibility of maybe throwing in a category eventually, and maybe putting some Stir of Echo love, since the Fangs and Infernos were all about that movie.
Definitely, man, for sure. Yeah, as opposed to Q, and I know that like traditional like Q style horror movies aren't, in giant abundance, but I'm just using it for the sake of the argument where, the Fangs and Infernos like just damn near unanimously gave it to Queen of the Damned. So it was like, something like that, where that was definitely the belief when it comes to Shaun. But yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, I love Shaun of the Dead. It's definitely one of the best horror comedies that have ever come out. And it's funny too, because I was kind of late to the party when it came to this. Not like so late to the party as in like needing to get caught up on it when it would be like in recent times when it comes to this show. I've been very, very familiar with Shaun of the Dead for many, many years and watched it so many times that even us getting rehashed with the movie the other day really wasn't necessary. But it's such a fun movie that I'm always down to watch it. But the funny thing is that movie came out at a time when I was still incredibly snobby about movies that parodied things I cared about and things I liked. So even though I had seen like on the taglines that like George Romero had given this movie like, his blessings and thumbs up that he was like it, that he liked it, I was still really, really snobby at that time about like not really liking something I cared so much about to be like made fun of. And there were certain exceptions to that, like, we've talked extensively about, our love for like Trauma, and I love the Toxic Avenger and stuff, and being, a huge Full Moon fan. We're both Full Moon people, whether it be Ginger Dead Man, Subspecies, Evil Bong, so much ridiculous awesomeness that comes out of there, Killjoy, all that kind of stuff. But with really the exception of those two, production companies, and maybe it's because that's genuinely their niche, that's their style, like that is what they do. I was so unwilling to give Shaun of the Dead the time of day for the longest time. I was just kind of like, fuck that movie, man. I don't want these people coming in thinking they can make fun of the horror genre. It's kind of like how I felt about Steel Panther back in the very early years. I remember them as Metal School. I remember them as Metal Shop. I remember when they became Steel Panther, and I was really unwilling to give them the time of the day because of my love of glam metal music and not wanting these peeps to just be making fun of it. And then but then I listened to the first album, realized that it was pretty quality playing. The songs were fun and I enjoyed the music, and it was pretty clean. It was very well done. And then it wasn't until I actually decided to go and see them live so I could stop being a keyboard warrior and be like, okay, let me give them the opportunity to change my mind, which they absolutely did. That concert was one of the most fun I've ever had at a show, and I was in it to win it from Steel Panther ever since. Really, same thing with Shaun of the Dead. I think I stumbled across it like casually on like Comedy Central or something one time, and was kind of like, all right, let me watch a little bit of this and just kind of see how I feel about it. And it was just kind of quality scene, fun joke, just kookiness that I liked, to the point where I was like, all right, I I feel I do. I feel like I like this enough. Let me check it out, unedited. And, went out not that long afterwards and just got myself my own copy and watched it like start to finish, unedited, and realized that it movie was so fun. That movie was just such a great time.
Yeah, yeah. See me, I was on the other spectrum. Like I saw Shaun of the Dead, when it first came out in theaters, because I was a huge fan. I mean, I'm a huge fan of British television. So,
Hmm.
I'm a huge like Monty Python fan, Blackadder and all that kind of stuff. And I was a huge fan of the TV show that all the guys did called Space, that had Nick Frost and it had Simon Pegg and it had Edgar Wright who wrote a lot of it. So I already kind of knew about like the, talks and the on the webs and stuff like that about them doing this horror movie and stuff like that. So I was like already went in it to win it, which is kind of cool because like whenever you go throughout the movie and stuff like that, if you're fans of space, you notice a lot of the extras that are in the movie are all are people who have been in the show Space, or there actually were fans of Space that were like on their webpage on Space was like, hey, come out to here and be an extra in our new movie that we're coming out with. And then, like I said, a lot of the actors and stuff like that, because like the girl that, is like the Shaun of the Dead, when they both meet into him, they see like their parallel versions of him, and it's the girl version of Shaun, and she's got
Yeah.
her team and her everybody else, and there's like like a kind of like a glass mirror version of like all of them. The main girl that he's talking to, she's his roommate in Spaced. So, that stuff like that. So a lot of the actors and actresses that were on that TV series, like I said, a couple of the main actors and then a few of the extras were periodically throughout the movie. So it's always fun to watch those. But yeah, I just loved it to begin with, just because it's like, it goes right in where, he's just oblivious to the world and everything goes, and then you see him going to the store getting the stuff. You see the girl that's kind of acting weird. You see like the guy in the prom, the prom or the wedding, suit that he's in. And then when he takes the bus, you see all those characters. And then when all the zombie stuff, starts coming around and all that stuff, you see those characters again reappearing and kind of sort of in the same fashion again, but this time they're actually, zombies, which I always thought was kind of funny because, even in this movie, they kind of poke light to it where you're not supposed to call them, the zombies. We don't use the Z word. But yeah,
No,
yeah, I just loved it, especially like in that very beginning. Like I remember the first time I saw it, like I said, when the apocalypse comes through and everything, and every time they try, I love how in this movie, every time they try to explain everything, they change the channel or something
yeah,
happens or somebody turns off the TV, and so you never really hear why. Like you hear a little bit like there was a something about a spaceship that was out and thing, and it fell, and then it's like other stuff. So you never really figure out exactly what started the apocalypse, but it was primarily in the UK and in England and stuff like that. But like that beginning scene where when it does happen and he goes back to the store and he's going around, he's just oblivious to the zombies going around doing stuff. But just that beginning where he walks into the cooler to get his drink and he slips, and he's just like, but he doesn't even pay attention that he slipped on blood. There's blood on
yeah,
there's like a handprint on the glass print. Like it's just so funny that he's just so blatantly like not paying attention to like all this freaking shit going into it, even to the point where they go to the bar and they're like, the person's like, oh, like, yeah, man, they must be really drunk. And they're like, oh, and they're like, they just keep going around. I just thought that was just funny. But like I said, I've always been like a huge fan of like the BBC and stuff like
yeah,
that show. So for me, like, I've always been a fan of that British humor. So for that, I was like,
sure.
adding that British humor, like I said, like the Monty Python, the Blackadders, and all that, Mr. Bean and things like that mixed in with my love of like I said, George Romero and those Dead films, and even like when he's calling for the restaurant, the fish restaurant. The fish restaurant's called Fulci, which is obviously a shout out to Fulci and stuff like that. The
Yep,
zombie. So I love all the throwbacks to the old school zombie. Even in the very beginning. I mean, it starts off right in the beginning, even before the
yeah,
movie even starts. When it does the logo, you hear the music. You hear the Dawn of the Dead music in the background. So it's like,
yep.
I was like, even in the theaters, I was fucking geeked already. I'm like, I already knew this was gonna be fun. But when you heard that Dawn of the Dead music, I was like, I had chills. I was like, oh fuck yeah, this is gonna be like a love letter to like George Romero and all that good stuff. But then adding that BBC humor to it.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely with you, Devil, because that's the thing too. Like, and then we'll go right into to getting into some of the fun breakdown of the movie. Is like, I'm definitely with you on that. Like, I was definitely disappointed in myself that I waited so long because I'm actually just like you. I love British humor. I love British shows. Obviously, everybody knows that I'm a Dark Shadows fan. That's not going to shock anybody. But I grew up on the
Wait, you like a vampire show?
yeah, yeah, those
Man.
vampire shows. It's pretty cool. Don't be surprised. I
Oh
love
man, I would have
I,
never
I,
figured that
I
you
like
liked
those
the
things.
British vampire show.
Not at all. But also I loved the BBC movies for the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
I love those movies so much still to this day. People can say what they want, but I think they actually hold up very well. Yeah, there's the practical effects, the costume materials aren't quite as like, great then as they are now, but the acting, the storytelling, what they did use from practical to special effects, I love those movies so much. Like you said, Mr. Bean, the Monty Python's is great, of course, especially the you know, Holy Grail, which is definitely my favorite one. So it was definitely one of that. But yeah, it was definitely part stemming off of just the fact that at that time I was very like sensitive and hadn't really taken the second to like calm myself down, where it's like, hey, parody doesn't necessarily mean insulting. And I hadn't really divided myself from that yet. Like I said, when there were bands that I subsequently like now, that wasn't it that I wasn't into then because I felt that they were making fun of, not paying tribute to. So it was a matter of like kind of taking a second to calm myself down and educate me there. But anyway, getting into the movie, yeah, I love the chill, kind of awkward start to the movie where you get kind of casually introduced to Shaun and Liz and Ed and Shaun and Ed's bitchy roommate because Ed's a mooch and the roommate's trying to be decent, but he's also trying to let Shaun know that this dude is just an anchor pulling his life down. And Liz just really wants them to take the next step in their relationship, but like even just something as simple as a nice romantic dinner isn't good enough because he just takes her to the same pub all the time. So it's just the same, stuck in the same loop. And it's, the fact that Shaun's trying to like stick up for himself. It's like, what do you mean we never do anything together? What do you mean we only go to the same places? I took you to Greece. And she's like, we met in Greece. Like, it's the basic setup to that. He's in this kind of dead end job where it's like he doesn't feel that he's wasting his life, but then he's like trying to be an authority figure when there's like, that one smart ass kid that works there that is 10 years younger than him, but you can tell he's just like an asshole where he's like, yeah, when are you going to start your life? He's like, well, remember, you don't want to be stuck here forever. Like, what are you, 23, 24? He's like 17. Like, I love the setup of the movie of just, you're learning about the characters pretty quick and like why this person cares about this person, why this person cares about this person, but feels that it's the right thing to do to step away. And then you learn about Shaun's parents and, he doesn't like his stepfather, but his stepfather loves him, but you don't really know that because he's always trying to make him be a bigger, better man and treat his mom right. It's just like stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love the fact that going back to all the the paying the tributes to to the zombie movies of past. I love the fact that his mom's name is Barbara,
Yes.
and then there's "We're coming to get you, Barbara," the whole entire time. You talked about the roommate. You know what I mean? You know, being a huge Star Wars fan and stuff like that. Simon Pegg has been in it, a couple of those guys. But the roommate, for most people, don't know that you know, we have the badass Darth Maul, Ray
Yep.
Parks, but the voice. The guy, he was the one who did the voice for Darth Maul, so that was kind of cool and stuff like that. Yeah, and I just love the fact that that you just keep on seeing all these kind of characters getting introduced and all these things like that in this movie, and then all of a sudden you go where it's just like boom, it goes right into it, and it's like, yeah, he's like, oh, the world's ending, and where are we gonna go? Oh, let's go to the let's go to a pub, the whole
The
entire time.
Winchester.
We're gonna go to the Winchester, and I just love the fact, like even in that too, like my favorite part, at least as far as I think is one of the best parts, and I still laugh and I still find it funny, is when they're in the pub and they're like, trying to kind of kill some zombies, and they're like fucking start playing Queen, Don't
The
Stop Me
best
Now, and
fight
they're
sequence
just going,
song
going
ever.
into into the motion of the song and stuff like that, and hitting the zombies and stuff like that at that thing. I just love that too, and I love the fact that even when they go and get he goes and gets Liz and the roommates and stuff like that. You notice that when they're out, everybody's got like a weapon, but nobody does anything except for Shaun. Shaun was the only one that was hitting everybody, which I always thought was kind of funny. But I found out the reason why they did that was because obviously that tree branch that the girl had, the one had I think it was like a golf club, and somebody else had something else. They were real weapons. So that's why they couldn't really hit the stunt people where Sean's cricket paddle was a at the time, whenever he's hitting people with his foam, so he can hit everybody with it. So I was always funny. I'm like, what the hell? What's the point of them getting weapons and then not using any of it and stuff like that? So I always thought that was kind of funny. You know what I mean? Just
Nick Frost had a shovel.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, Nick had the shovel, yeah. But I just love that. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. Even like even in the beginning with the zombie, the girl, like, man, she must be really sauced out there, man. They're throwing something. All of a sudden, they're like, "What?"
They're
They're like,
hitting
"Oh, your
with
girlfriend wants to
records.
come after you," and she like jumps on them. Then they realize, like, "Oh shit, something's going down." And yeah, they get like the bucket of stupid shit and throw in like toilet paper and like little crickets and spoons and shit. And they're like, then they go into the vinyl, and I'm like, "Oh shit, the vinyl actually is kind of cool because it." At one point it hits the dude and kind of goes into him.
They hit the like fat zombie with like the fucking laundry basket, which is that really flexy little rubber
Yeah,
plastic. It's like those dollar store fucking laundry baskets. So that thing just bounces off his
yeah, yeah.
chest. Hey, no, that's the second album I ever bought.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. You know, like I said, they push the girl, and she goes into the pool, and then comes out, and they have that really cool view of like you can see them through her, like the hole in their stomach and shit like that. I mean, yeah, I just love it. Like, I mean, even like I said, even to me, when I still watch it, when they get drunk and they get sauced and they start playing, put the on the record and they start playing the electro, I'm over dancing, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, listen to that," and he's like, "It's electro, dick."
And your stupid hip hop isn't helping me.
Yeah, he's like, "It's not hip hop, it's electro, you dick."
Yeah, no, it's so hilarious because it's also really funny too about just like the subtle little like goofy things when they're like when like they're going through the records to use as weapons, but like Shaun won't let him throw like certain things, and
Yeah,
they'll be like, he throws and the one that I remember being so damaging to the psyche of like pure music people is when they throw and destroy the Blue Monday from New Order, because if you especially when Shaun says that's an original pressing, because like an original pressing of that record is ridiculously expensive.
yeah.
Like it is psychotic. And then he's like, "What's this one? The Batman soundtrack." Throw it. And then it's like, "What about this?" Like, "Oh, Sade." "No, man, you can't do that. That's Liz's. She just dumped you." And just
Yeah.
chucks it out like a weapon. But it's just so many like subtle just nuances, so much like fun. It's just a good like laughable time. And then ultimately when you get to, you know, the big climactic finish, back at the Winchester, as because it's that traditional like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead type, like trailblazing type movie. They're moving around. They collect, they get Shaun's mom, they get his stepfather. The stepfather ends up becoming a zombie, so they end up having to kill him. Eventually, unfortunately, the mother turns and they have to handle that. And then they're in the Winchester, and one of my favorite things is Liz's best friend's husband is infatuated with Liz, and they make points of reference to it all throughout the movie where he's like, "What are you talking about? I have no interest in Liz." To the point where eventually his wife actually speaks up and is like, "Yes, you are. But I've put up with it for 20 years that we've been together or whatever. But look, I know you have feelings for her." And then he gets dragged out the window by the zombies and ripped into a million pieces.
Yeah, as I said, and like I said, as much as you really don't like his character throughout the movie, because he's just that you can tell he's like you said, he's just following and he's in love with Liz and he's kind of whiny and annoying. He literally has the best death throughout the movie because he gets the old school like Day of the Dead, like
Yeah.
ripped, pulled completely apart. And
Just
then the
stomach
girlfriend,
intestines out of there.
yeah, then the girlfriend just kind of even after he's already been ripped into a million pieces, she goes out there trying to save him, like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you!" Like, dude, there's nothing left of him. What are you like? Her death is just like completely just stupid. Like, they're just like, she's just like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get you and save you," and as she's holding like a piece of his leg or something already. It's like,
I
yeah.
can put you back together.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just like, yeah, it was just like, what the hell? And then it's like, you go into it where, Ed gets eventually bit, which he's the roommate comes back and he's messing around with him and he gets bit and they go down in a blaze. And just like I love it where it's like that where yeah, he said, you know, they finally get up and they finally like that, and all of a sudden the military's here, and lo and behold, the military are found by the group that we saw earlier, like I mentioned, the girl that's up like that. So if like Shaun and them would have went with them instead of going to Winchester like an idiot, they all of them would have still been alive. But I just love that. I just love that. It kind of reminds me of like the ending of like The Mist. The remake one where like he's in the car and he's like, "Oh man," and all creatures and all that shit like that. He decides to like shoot his wife and shoot his kid and then shoot himself, and then like literally 2 seconds later, like the military comes through and
Yeah.
like it's like, yeah, see, you just waited a couple of extra seconds, you would have been okay. So it's like,
Yeah.
I just love that. But I also love a lot of it too because like even the climactic ending of it where you find out, he still has Ed in the in the shed and he's playing the games. But even like the prior before
Like a
that with
pet.
when they have the TV series where the TV show talking about like how like the dead is kind of have the the ones that are still alive that they haven't taken out have kind of like brought back other things that they can do, and they kind of make them kind of go to work and push carts and stuff. And it reminds me of a lot of Otis, at the very,
Yeah.
where they do like that, where it's all of a sudden they're making zombies work and shit like that. So I always thought that was kind of funny that they were doing that and stuff like that. So I was like, hey, it's just a great, like I said, it's just a funny ending. And then like you said, you got the climatic ending where he laughs, and he does it twice, but he's like, I'm sorry, Shaun. He's like, hey man, it's all right, you're no good. And he's like, no, I'm sorry. And then he smells his fart, and he's like, I hate when you do that. He's like, I'll stop doing it when you stop laughing. But obviously, dick and fart jokes are funny, so you're always gonna laugh about it. So it's like funny as shit.
No, no, for sure. And yeah, like you said, Devil. Yeah, it's like you know, every life is slowly it's like COVID. It's like life is slowly but surely like going back to normal. Liz and Shaun are now just living, for lack of a better term, the married life, the domestic life. And but yeah, and they've got Ed like chained up in the garage in the garden because he can't do away with his friend, and he couldn't kill him, and he couldn't leave him to the military. And so they're playing a video game together to end the movie, and Ed still tries to take like a bite out of Shaun, and Shaun's just like, Ed, what are you doing? And Ed's just like, oh, but in zombie language, but basically kind of the equivalent of, oh, my bad, and it's a fun movie. It's a good time, man. So let's pop into the obituaries, my friend. I mean, I think it's safe to say that both of us do hold this movie in very high regard, which I think is, we definitely do. But how do you look at a score for it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, you definitely, I mean, like one thing we didn't mention that it's got the quote equivalent of a trilogy that they kind of
Yes.
kind of give the Cornetto trilogy, which you have Shaun of the Dead as the first one, then you have Hot Fuzz, which if anybody had never seen Hot Fuzz, yeah, it's not particularly like Shaun of the Dead horror. It's more of like blaze 'em, shoot 'em up action, but with a little bit of that, little bit of still horror, mystery, thriller
Yeah,
kind
it's a
of
little
thing.
Sherlock Holmesy,
Yeah.
conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and then World's End, which is like a combination of kind of both alien takeover slash action slash weird shit. So yeah, like I said, but like I said, coming straight out of the bat, like you said earlier, if you think of more modern horror comedies, you know what I mean? You think of ones like where it comes to even not modern, but when you think of like horror comedies to begin with. There's some that you automatically put into it. You put like, Evil Dead's up on there. The Evil Dead's the Army of Darknesses and all that kind of stuff. You kind of have Return of the Living Dead, with that kind of poking the fun of like the zombies and stuff like that. And when you think of like anything from like comedy, especially horror from like that 2000s and stuff like that, Shaun of the Dead is definitely like one of those ones that's up there. People, I mean, like I said, this movie has been out for 20 plus years now. People still watch it. People still talk about it. People are still you go to comic cons, you go to horror conventions, you go to anything. People are still dressed up as Shaun, with the red, and people still dress up as it. And those characters and those actors, are pretty fluent in the thing. They're not nearly as much as before or as now, because most of the those guys being all British and stuff, they typically tend to usually do more of the the UK cons and stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, it's just one of those. Shaun of the Dead is definitely one of those ones where, like, if you ask somebody like a horror comedy, it's definitely going to be up there on the top. It's on definitely on the Mount Rushmore of like
Oh yeah.
horror comedies to begin with. And like I said, it's just fun. You have the actors. I love the fact that people were, like you said, with George Romero giving him the props and saying, "Oh no, this is great." That he even asked, he asked Edgar, who wrote it, and Simon Pegg to both play zombies in Land of the Dead that we talked
Mhm.
about. So I thought
Yep.
that was just kind of cool too, where it was like, yeah, you know what I mean. It's a comedy, but it's not making fun of the genre, because people like Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright are huge legitimate huge George Romero and zombie fans. So it's basically kind of like a more of a comedy, like love letter to that. Where versus like, you like Return of the Living Dead, a lot of people know that there was a little bit of animosity between George and John Russo and all that kind of stuff about writing and things. So Return of the Living Dead was kind of like a comedy spoof making fun of that, but it was meant not 100%, but kind of meant to be sort of like, I can do this too, kind of like a revenge kind of thing. Where Shaun of the Dead was definitely more of like a love letter to those films. So like I said, to me, I've seen this movie 9 million times. Like I said, I just literally watched it again yesterday to prepare for this, even though I didn't need to, because I could pretty much recite the whole entire movie from
Yep.
beginning to end anyway. But yeah, for me, it's like I don't know, man. I feel like I can't give it a perfect 10 because there's very little horror movies that I'll probably ever give 10, which we already know, Lost Boys is going to be a 10 on there. Rocky Horror Picture Show is going to be a 10 on there. Some of the other ones that we're going to do, like Halloween 1, my love for Halloween 1 is going to be a 10. It might not be a 10 for everybody. It might be a 10 for some people,
The
but
Exorcist for
yeah,
me.
The Exorcist on there. So there's ones like that. So I can't put it in as high regard as that, but I'm definitely still going to give it a good solid higher than pretty much 99% of the stuff we've talked about before. I'm going to give it a 9.0.
I'll match you on that, Devil. Absolutely. Yeah, like because when it comes to zombie like comedies, like if you're putting me or probably the average horror person on just on blast, like right now you have to give your Mount Rushmore of zombie comedy horror movies. You're gonna get, Evil Dead, slash Evil Dead 2 slash Army of Darkness, but I'm not saying that's three spots. I'm just saying some people might like Evil Dead. Some people like Evil Dead 2. Some people like Army of Darkness. I'm just saying one of those Bruce Campbell ashes is going to be represented. You know, Return of the Living Dead is most likely going to be represented. Um, Shaun of the Dead is absolutely going to be there, I think, unanimously. And then the fourth spot, if, like I said, if you're putting me on the spot, it's going to be subjectively down to what fans like Zombieland and what fans like The Dead Don't Die. Like those are kind of the other two movies that I think subjectively half of them are going to say The Dead Don't Die, half of them are going to say Zombieland. As far as popular, the popular ones,
Yeah,
there's plenty of comedy zombie movies that like are going to be like dearly beloved. Like me personally, it wouldn't be, even though it's more romance, but again, because of my love of the cast and my love of the particular actor in particular, and we talked about it at a previous showdown, if you're putting me on the spot, Warm Bodies is probably what's going to end up getting my fourth spot on there. But I just think the common populace of horror fans and movies that were theatrically released and stuff like that, it's probably going to be a lot of Zombielands and a lot of The Dead Don't Die. But I do think that collectively, Return, Evil Dead, and Shaun, that's your first three, just about unanimously. But I'll meet you with a 9 on there, man. It's just such a good time. It's so fun. Shout out to my buddies in the band Seglock because they did a Shaun of the Dead inspired You've Got Red on You t-shirt that I had to buy from them, that I do love to wear because that shirt is so awesome and it just reminds me of the movie so much. And it also speaks to the strength of the movie as well, because me personally, I'm not really the world's biggest fan of like my shirts mixing. I'm not really a really big fan of like musical shirts that reference movies and movies that reference like bands. It's never really kind of been my thing, if I want to wear an Evil Dead shirt, I kind of want it to be an Evil Dead shirt. If I want to wear a Motley Crue shirt, I want it to be a Motley Crue shirt. I don't really want to wear like, I don't know, a typo negative t-shirt that looks like, Beetlejuice or something like that. I don't know. It's just kind of I'm weird like that. But like But I do have those crossovers. I mean, you gifted me one of my favorite shirts, which is the Lost Boys cast as the logos of the Guns N' Roses Appetite for Destruction, and that's a shirt that you also wear regularly. So like, there are exceptions because they're just so bitchin'. But yes, Shaun of the Dead. That's the way it's going to be. We're going to end it on that note there, Fangs and Infernos. 9.0 from the Devil and Vampire when it comes to Shaun of the Dead, the S in Alphabets of Horror. And of course, shout out to a lot of our beloved partners. You like hot things just like the Devil? Coney Island Saucery is the way with the Vampireanddevil discount code. We've got our friends in Brutalities, lots of tasty beverages. They've got, of course, dominantly teas, but they've got coffee as well for those other people like myself that really like their coffee. Twisted Vines and Horror Decor. You need a place to stay for the evening, go check out Periopolis, our good friend Chris at the Buffalo Bill House, the bed and breakfast there. And of course, shop till you drop, shop till you're dead. Shop till you freak at the Spooky Boutique when it comes to our friends Mark and Lizzie at rockandhorror.com for all of the Vampire and Devil merch. That's the way it's going to be there, Fangs and Infernos. Again, 9.0. A very awesome high score, deservedly so. Alphabets of Horror for letter S, Shaun of the Dead. Horns up. Fangs out. Devil, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
I think if there's anybody who would know hot things, it's you.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's only right that you let our beloved Fangs know what they can order now, courtesy of Coney Island.
Oh, yeah, man. We're in the kitchen. You know it gets hot in the kitchen. And what else better for your finger foods, for your tacos, for your victims that you may be eating? Maybe some sauce. And you should get it from the sauce boss. Coney Island sauce. Oh, yeah. Get some of that good stuff. Oh, yeah. You like to sprinkle it on anything. You could sprinkle it on your fingers. Sprinkle it on your toes. Sprinkle it on your hose. Anything you want to sprinkle goes.
Absolutely. We have partnered with Coney Island Saucery. Aaron is fantastic. We really appreciate all the love he's given to the show, and we're very, very pleased and honored to be a part of him. So he's got 4 sauces out of various heat levels to enjoy on all your various foods, but also for anybody who is already following his socials, our socials, or is about to be, newly announced partnership with Slayer.
Slayer, oh yeah.
Coney Island
burning to fire.
Oh yeah, Coney Island Saucery does have a Slayer brand hot sauce coming out very, very soon. And so make sure that you check that out for all your various levels of spice. This is Vampire and the Devil, Coney Island Saucery. Horns up, fangs out. Devil, my friend, I think we should have a little quick conversation about everybody's respectful celestial abodes, where it be my little coffin, where I lay my head at night, or at times that you feel that you just want to go back down to make sure that hell's not getting out of whack while you are away. Let's talk about it. Vampire and Devil's newest partnership in Twisted Vines, our dear friends, Chris and Sarah and Cadaver.
Oh yeah, you like scary stuff, you like horror decor, come and check out Twisted Vines. They make all the kind of cool shit, all for your house, all kinds of scary shit. They love it. You like to bring back the horror, you want to scare your neighbors, you want to conjure up a friend to talk to, you want to conjure up somebody bad, you want to do some bad stuff to them, you go to Twisted Vines and get some of their merch.
Absolutely, for sure. Everything is completely handmade by them. So if you need a little friend, maybe a round set abode, maybe you want to conduct a little evil towards a friend that was a friend, maybe no longer a friend. They have voodoo dolls they can do for you to allow for such activities. But you know how much we love our Ouija boards, my friend, and they make all of those by hand. They took care of your beloved vampire with a nice Nosferatu board, but the devil, he happens to be a Munsters fan. And not only do they do boards as traditional rectangles, but they can put a little bit of coffin flair in them.
Oh yeah, look at that coffin shape Munster board. Yeah, you wanna conjure up Mr. Herman? You wanna ask him how Pet Cemetery was? You can do it on this board. Oh yeah.
Absolutely, my friend. So, again, thank you so much to Twisted Vines for partnering with the Vampire and Devil podcast. And make sure that you, Fangs and Infernos, are checking them out on their Facebook page, on their Instagram pages, and making sure that you are checking them out as they move around the country, showing their craft off at all of the various horror cons and oddities expos that they love to do. So, absolutely, my friend. Of course, man, horns up, fangs out for our friends at Twisted
Oh,
Vines.
yeah.
Hey, it's the devil here, and we're here to continue on with those 90s horror comedies that you love so much. This time we're going to talk about 1997's Killer Condom. Have you seen this movie? Oh, yes. What's not to love? Getting your penis bit off? Maybe. That might not be good. That might hurt. But anyway, the Killer Condom. Oh yeah, I remember watching this movie when it was presented by Lloyd Kaufman and the Trauma Team. They brought it out and let everybody see the world of the Killer Condom. I love how the design by H. Geiger for the condom. It's very creepy, very scary, very funny, very kooky, very, very scary. Ooh, I wouldn't want to wear that condom that way. But then again, would you want to have kids? I don't know. That's a tough choice. Fucking dealing with shitty brats or getting your ding dong chopped off by a killer condom. Anyway, go check out 1997's Killer Condom before it comes after you.
Fangs and Infernos. Many of you have children. Some of you do. Some of you don't. Some of you may have ridden yourself of said children. Devil, my friend, I think it's time we have a conversation of where the children have gotten rid of the adults. Have a little bit of an interesting conversation for this showdown as we do a little bit of Killer Kids, as we put some Cronenberg in the Brood up against who could kill a child.
Oh yeah, you gotta talk about those miserable little rugrats. We're gonna talk a little bit about them. And there's a reason why Pat Benatar wrote Hell is for Children, because kids are shitty and they suck and they take your money and your life and make you go gray and probably want to kill people. And you know, sometimes sometimes they wanna kill you too, you know what I mean? You got the children of the corn mob. And sometimes we gotta talk about killer kids, and that's what we're gonna talk about today, about these little spoiled little brats that, maybe have a little surprise for mommy and daddy.
Absolutely, my friend, because this conversation is going to be interesting enough, man. Because when it came to these two movies in particular, dude, these kids were little assholes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Although, we'll get into it a little bit later, but theoretically, technically, the kids in the Brood are really not kids. They're like mutant, alien, weird shit created from some psychosis thing that resembles kids. But it's
Yeah,
kids enough. They came from a woman. They spawned out of her
they
weird ass
dressed in they're
belly.
dressed in snow jackets with little hoodies, wearing kitty
Yeah, so they're
ones.
yeah, so they count enough.
They're close enough.
It's close, and they're kid
No,
adjacent.
absolutely. But we're going to talk about some killer kids and some little assholes from back in the 70s, my friend, as we're going to talk a little bit about 79 with Cronenberg and The Brood, and a little bit of 76 with Who Can Kill a Child. But when it comes to The Brood, my friend, you know me, man. I love my Cronenberg. I love weird and bizarre and just out there shit. And it was really fun to like revisit this movie because I hadn't watched it in a minute. And I loved this movie back in the day. And it was funny because I remember when I watched it for the first time, it kind of started off as a little bit of this kind of like poltergeist feel to it, where I already had like, you know, it kind of had this feel almost like it was going to start out like a poltergeist kind of movie where where it seemed like the main girl Candace, or Candy as she's referred to a lot, was like this kind of possessed kind of crazy thing. But to be honest, it really wasn't that at all. Yes, that's going to make its way in towards the end of the movie when we get towards the obituaries, and we'll discuss that when we get close to it. But overall, in general, what kind of looks like she's this main catalyst of the movie, honestly, she's really not. It really has more to do with the fact of like, it's, this wife versus this husband, the wife who's going absolutely crazy, the husband who's kind of on the straight and narrow trying to look out for their daughter while his wife is going crazy, and then the doctor who's kind of like looking like he's trying to put the moves on the wife behind the dad's back and trying to kind of use Candy as the leverage.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, especially when it comes to the Cronenberger, I've always, like I said, we've always, we're huge fans of his. This is a movie that is in part of the Criterion collection and stuff like that. But I mean, and I mean, other than like the last like 15-20 minutes of this movie. I'm not a huge fan of this movie. I honestly, I wouldn't put this as the worst Cronenberg film, but I definitely like, when you go through some of those epic films that he's done. This is like, definitely a lot lower on the list. I know it's, but it's one of his first ones, so
Yeah.
he got to get into the spirit of it. But like I said, it's always one that people know about, people talk about it, a lot like that stuff like that. But yeah, it's just a weird like concept because you're like not 100% sure what's going on half the
Uh-huh.
time. It's like, is it scanners for a minute? No. Is it like some kind of fire starter shit? No. Like you said, some poltergeist kind of stuff. No. And then you're like, they're talking about like psychosis and this woman's crazy and she's like, metamorphizing freaking little offsprings that, eventually when you see in the movie, like are part of
Yeah.
her belly and she's basically like giving birth to these weird ass creatures and shit. Yeah, it's just I mean, it definitely fits the Cronenberg, David style and like weirdness and shit like that. Like I said, literally the last like 10-15 minutes of the movie is more like the Cronenberg that, we've kind of grown to love with that body horror and things like that.
Oh yeah. The last 20 minutes of this movie, I love it to death. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, go give me more. Ah, fuck. What do you mean it's over? But at the same time, it's like it's got that slow burn feel to it. In fact, it's got a very slow burn feel to it. I do like the build up of this movie, but the problem with it is when it when it strikes kind of the way it does, and when the first kind of little bastard child comes out, you know, fucking hammer smash face style, just like malleting the fuck out of people. I mean, I really like it. It's really cool, and it kind of gives me a little bit of that like that evil twin kind of feel to it, because that was kind of the direction when I saw it originally, and even kind of crossed my brain when I was revisiting it the other day, is that it does kind of have this, you know, evil twin feel to it, where it's like, is this Candy's twin that they keep locked in like a cupboard? Is she like, she wasn't deformed and she looks good and seems normal and cool? So they're the ones that they're nurturing her, almost kind of like that episode of The Simpsons and Treehouse of Horror where Bart had an evil twin called Hugo that they fed like fish guts to and like kept him chained up in the attic. It kind of had a little bit of that feel to it. And then, yeah, you would have this like crazy mutant child in like a snow hoodie, like come out and just, granted, just epically fucking people up. Like, you know, takes out the one, person in the house, ends up, beating to death the teacher that looked like she was developing a bit of a personal relationship with the husband, and then still kind of makes its way to where you find out the overall, you know the plan, like kind of the way that it works, where originally you just think it's these mutant children hiding in attics just kind of coming out when they feel their bubble is being invaded. And I really like the way, I like the kills. Like I do. I like the concept of the mutant children taking people out. And the way they did it, I liked it. There's a simplicity factor. Like, don't get me wrong, there's don't get me wrong, there's not a lot of extra, there's not a lot of gray area behind fucking hammer smashing somebody to death. Like, it's pretty clear. But it's the in between scenes are definitely a little bizarre. They're written well. At least I think they're written well. It does work for the story, but there's also a little bit of like trying to make the audience kind of figure out what's going on, but it's not as clear of a path as you feel it should be. Like, you really have to be walking through the path in the jungle, like with your fucking like machete, like clearing out the way, like figuring shit out. It reminds me a little bit of Frailty from one of our previous episodes. The concept, the writing is really good, and I really do like the story that's being told, but you really have to think and watch and dissect.
Yeah, I mean, and the one thing I do like about the movie too, it's one of those ones where, like, it's sort of like that precaution tale of, like, be careful what you kind of wish for. And like, even in this movie too, with the doctor that's like, putting the wife into like all this, therapy, and kind of making her basically morph into this being and being able to do the stuff that she's doing, which is creating the monsters. And then once he figures out all this shit, he's like, oh man. And now he's like on the guy side. Oh yeah, she's out there, go and kill her and do all this shit. Like, he realized that, like, maybe he shouldn't have messed around in that kind of realm, because he thought it was kind of cool that, she was able to take these emotions and kind of bubble these, like, this psychotic kind of thing to, like I said, to create this being, and then be able to, her emotions are the ones who are, emoting these guys to go around and kill. So, if you pissed her off or you did something to her, she kind of sent this. And it was all cool in theory when he was like thinking about it, like the fact that, she can control this and control that and all that. But then once it started getting a little out of hand, and she's creating more and more of these monsters, and they're literally like, even in the one scene where it was like, where he was like, he's telling, he's trying to go, and the doctor's trying to go and save Candy from these monsters, and he keeps on telling the husband, yeah, tell your wife everything's good, woo her and dine her and do all this stuff, say all this stuff to her, because if she's in a good mood, these monsters are kind of dormant. They don't really do anything. They feed off her emotions, and that's when, he goes in, and it goes in the room, and he's able to kind of walk around all these little things and stuff like that and get her, because they're kind of just kind of drone, sitting there waiting. And then, once he figures out that, the husband doesn't actually care for her anymore, and he's just trying to say all this stuff, and yeah, they go ape shit on the freaking doctor, and give him a good eating. And I always thought that was kind of cool. It's like I said, it's like, that, precautionary tale, like, don't always like what you wish for, and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, it might come back and bite you in the ass. And for the doctor, he got his ass bitten and a few other things.
He definitely did, and it's a crazy end scene too, because like the husband's doing a good job, you know, but then you can tell, he's obviously unprepared for when she opens up her robe, and it's like basically like, like an outer uterus. It's like, the birth canal, but coming literally out of her stomach, as opposed to like coming out of like her proper female areas. And like, it's this sac that like houses this mutant child, because they talk about it earlier in the movie when there is one of those children who dies, and they're kind of studying it kind of Independence Day style when they were able to get their hands on that one alien, where they realize there's no belly button and stuff like that. So it's like, well, these children are clearly not being birthed traditionally. But yeah, but I also love that towards the end scene where, when you see him get scared and like, holy shit, when he sees how she truly creates these creatures. And you can just see as the doctor's trying to leave carefully with Candy and not attract attention, but as they're becoming, undormant and no longer docile, that they just are jumping out of their bunks and jumping out of their beds and kind of surround him. You can just see that look on his face of like, you know, it's like that new current meme, like it was at this moment when he knew he fucked up. Like when
Yeah.
he just knew he was trapped and it was going to get a hell of a lot worse before it got better. But yeah, they basically kind of like ate him alive and beat him to death, like however, that happened. And then ultimately, what took out all the mutant children was the husband strangling the mother. And once he killed, which she was like, well, then do it. If you're going to do this to me, then do it. Kill me. Take me out, which he does. And he did. And it takes out all the kids. They're just lying in a little puddle of onesies, just chilling right there. And, because they're going after Candy and she's hiding in a closet. But then the interesting kind of twist at the end, again, very Cronenberg, is being that Candy is the actual daughter of this mom. They finally kind of officially really touch on the fact that she is birthed properly. And it never really shows anything specifically about Candy except earlier in the movie when it comes to like marks on her back and stuff like that that just look like various injuries that got the father all riled up because he thought his daughter was being abused by his wife. And that's what leads you to the end and kind of the surprise little twist is that she's got these sores, these you know birth defects or these birthmark kind of things on her arm like what the mom has that shows potentially or theoretically that by Candy being birthed naturally, like any normal child would be, she appears to have inherited what ultimately her mother likely had.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I kind of, I like that ending where, yeah, it doesn't really specifically give you a lot, but yeah, it gives you that point of view, thinking that okay, maybe the whatever powers or whatever ability to do that the mom was doing, that if the daughter can do that. Not necessarily meaning that she's going to do it, but to mean if she's put into a you know later situation where her husband's not treating her right or her boyfriend's doing something wrong, who knows? She might conjure up a couple of those snowshoot kids and send them on over. Prom date didn't give me the right color
Oh,
flower for my thing, so now I'm gonna have to send over the munchkins from hell.
yes. No, 100% double for sure. I mean, and there's not really that much to really go, post that. When it comes into the obituaries, it's very, very simple for me. Like I can't go over the top for this one, even though I really do enjoy it. Again, we're Cronenberg people. It's not his best work. I don't think it's his worst. I definitely do enjoy this movie. It's not something that I see myself really plugging in multiple times a year, but I could see myself maybe very periodically as I'm scrolling being like, that could be a fun one tonight. 'Cause I do have a physical copy. It's right on my shelf. And I do enjoy the movie. I like the design. Again, I do really like the story that it tells, but its lack of action, its action is top notch when it hits. And I do feel that very much. But its lack of action and its sort of slow burn storytelling that's a little bit monotonous to the whole, like, God, just get to the point, does hurt the movie a little bit. And while I don't want to knock it down and beat the crap out of it because it doesn't deserve that. And again, I really do enjoy the movie, but a 6.5 is where I feel solid for this film.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with you. Like I said, it's definitely not his finest work. It's definitely not his worst work or whatever. And like I said, even the other actors that are in the movie, there were times where you're just like, okay, yeah, just get on with it, man. Yeah, okay, blah blah blah. You're just like Jesus, man. Like, nobody came here to hear about your whiny dad problems and shit like that. We want to see more of these snowboard kids from hell in their crazy Teletubby outfits going around and killing people and shit. So
No,
it's like,
seriously.
yeah, yeah. So it's like, yeah, yeah, get to the point, man. We just want to see some shit, and then we find out they're mutant crazy things, and you're like coming from this belly, and it was like, okay, that's pretty messed up. But yeah, again, like I said, I mean, if you're watching a Cronenberg movie, there's definitely never a dull moment when it comes to weird ass body shit, which like everybody knows he's into his body, body horror stuff. But yeah, like I said, overall, like I said, it's an entertaining movie. It's one that I've probably watched maybe a couple times in my life, but it's
Yeah,
not anything that, like I said, when it comes, if I'm going to, we're hanging out with a bunch of ghouls and crazy dead people, and they're just like, hey, let's pop in a Cronenberg movie. The Brood is never going to be that first one I'm going to throw into the fire. But then again, if a bunch of people want to watch it, yeah, I'll watch it. But like I said,
yeah.
it's definitely not one of those ones that I'm, putting on the top of the list for, for a Kronberger film that night. But like you said, I agree. I think 6.5 is a good marker for the Brood.
Absolutely, for sure. Because also, Cronenberg's got his hand in just so many like insane, cookie jar movies, let alone with the fact that like right up there high on the list, of course, is movies like The Fly. So
Yeah.
like you've got that and you've got, Rabid and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely one of those, but it's a good time. It's enjoyable. I live it up to the Fangs and Infernos. Like, check it out and stuff, but also it does come with a disclaimer like leave yourself time to watch this movie. And the fact of the matter is the movie's not long. It's a standard hour and a half movie. But because there is that slow burn feel to it, like it's probably going to have some literal just tiredness feel when you're watching it if you're not prepared to be relaxed but not throwing it in right after you had like a 12-hour shift at work.
Yeah.
But so that's the way it's going to be, Fangs and Infernos. We're going to start it off, solid enough with a 6.5 for Cronenberg's The Brood and Killer Kids. Now we're going to get into the Devil's Pick. Devil, who could kill a child?
Oh, yeah, that's not my territory. That's the man above's territory. He's the one that deals with killing little children. Oops, I should have said that. Anyway, yes, I was like, I was thinking of, killer movies and stuff like that. And this one has always had like a special like place in my heart when I think about it. Cause it's basically, for a lot of people, it's kind of a precursor to a lot of these killer kid movies and stuff like that. Especially like movies that you would, that people would assume that we would do, like Children of the Corn
Yeah.
and those kind of stuff. This is kind of that like precursor to that. And unfortunately, for all you Fangs and Infernos out there that do not live in a world where you can get Blu-rays and DVDs and movies that cost like an arm and a leg because they're hard to find. This is definitely one that you can watch. You can find it on streaming services and stuff like that. But there is a huge but to it. There's a lot of this movie is in Spanish and German, and you have no translations whatsoever. And I remember the first time I seen this movie, I did see it on a copy of a DVD. So I remember watching it and remember having the subtitles. And then, like I said, when we were discussing what movies to put out, I was like, oh shit, hey, vampire, yeah, there's no subtitles in this movie, so which I mean, in one aspect, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change the plot. You can kind of figure out what's going on with not knowing what they're saying. But I mean, there is a good portion of the movie because it's usually quick, and then the tourist in it go back to speaking English again, and or he'll go and explain like what she was saying and stuff like that. So that's a lot of that. But there is a couple times where it's like there's a little bit too much of Spanish in it, and you're just kind of like sitting there like, yep, I'm watching about a minute and a half, 2 minutes of talking, and I have no idea what the shit's going on. Because I mean, unless you understand or speak Spanish, yeah, you have no idea what they're talking about the whole entire time. But like most of the time, when they're conversing through the language and stuff like that, you can kind of, even though you have no idea what you're saying, you can kind of put it in your head. Okay, this is what this guy is
Right.
saying. This is what this guy is saying. You can give it, and like I said, it has nothing against the plot in the movie, but yeah, that's the only bad thing about this movie for anybody out there that hasn't seen this movie that might be interested in it. I know the Blu-ray has gotten pretty cheap. I think you can buy it for like $30, which isn't too bad for Blu-rays. But if you want the DVD copy of it, it's like a hundred and some dollars. Apparently, it's super hard to get. It's one of those DVDs that are hard to find. So yeah, like I said, unfortunately, yeah. I mean, you can, like I said, you can watch it on streamings and YouTube and all that stuff like that. But like I said, the only problem with it is you're not going to get that Spanish. But anyway, you don't need it because nobody cares, man. Nobody cares about what the subplot of this movie is. It's two tourists that are apparently not that are white, but apparently not white. But you're not 100% sure. You can definitely tell it was filmed in Spain and all these other countries, and they made these guys speak English even though they didn't speak English. And I'm pretty sure the people who dubbed the English probably didn't speak English very well either. But anyway, like I said, none of that shit matters, man. You don't even care, man. You don't care about this husband and this couple, and apparently they had kids and they left them, and she's pregnant again. It's like they're just gonna go on this little mini vacation, and it's again, it's in the vein of all these these movies that we've talked about before, like like Old and all these movies about people going to like these like exotic places, like even like when we talk about with with Wolf Creek and Hostel and all that kind of stuff. This is that same thing, man. You're going to this foreign country. They're in like, they're in like some country and stuff like that. They're going around. They're looking around, and yeah. And when you're watching it, especially in the beginning of the movie, they get to this island, and everybody's kind of like, oh, where to go? And they're walking around, and there's nobody around, and it looks like scenes. There's this, that, and there's all this crap going everywhere. But everything's, chickens running around. It's look like it's been cooking for 300 years, and no one's around. And you kind of go like when you're watching this movie, you're kind of like, I've seen this before. And yes, like I said, you have seen it before. You saw a lot of that shit in Children of the Corn. A lot of the stuff that you see in the very beginning of Children of the Corn when they're going into the town is a lot of the stuff that basically is what this movie did about 10, 15 years earlier or whatever before that movie came out. So that's how I always say it's kind of like the precursor for that. But anyway, it's a good story. It's a lovely story about two couples that are in love and meet up with some children that like I said, man, kids are horrible.
Yeah. No, 100% for sure. Yeah, because I watched this movie, undubbed, and I watched it. I knew what I was getting into, and like I watched it. I paid attention. I made sure to like kind of be on my P's and Q's. But then I looked it up afterwards and like read more of a detailed synopsis just to kind of like clarify some stuff because it does, for being an unsubtitled movie, you're right. It's pretty easy to figure out, or at least stay in the ballpark of it. That's what I suggest. Fangs and Infernos is watch the movie, you know, and then just do a little read up on it, and it'll just kind of, it'll make you understand things a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea of the movie. I like the concept of this movie. This movie honestly didn't do it for me as an overall whole. I did think it was really cool. I liked the story that it told. I liked certain concepts that it dove into, like in a second, when I address the pregnancy killing. That was that was cool. That was a very unique thing and those are kills that do not happen, especially at that time. But the movie itself was kind of a very interesting overall design. I mean, it starts off with this like documentary style intro where it's showing like real world famine and children. Like it talks about like Auschwitz and like all these really, really crazy concentration camps, famine in third world countries, actual footage of incredibly slender children. Like very, very weird. So like even when I started watching it, I'm kind of like, why the fuck did Devil pick a documentary?
Are we watching the movie I'm supposed to be watching?
I was like, not that he's not entitled to choose like a documentary film. It's still a film that fits the topic, I guess. Just because I hadn't gotten into the, why it's a kids thing. But it was just kind of interesting. And then the movie starts and it's that whole kind of design. Again, that it also has a little bit of a slow burn to start it off. It doesn't really get going until, the husband and wife are like on the island having their vacation, and then shit kind of starts getting weird, as they start realizing that these kids are like they're doing bad things and things are really, really crazy, and they're being like attacked. they're like hiding in this like kind of like jail cell looking hostel type place. They've got a fucking kid climbing through like the air ducts on the wall trying to shoot them with like pistols, and that little dude gets his brain like splattered all over the air vent. I mean, it's a really really crazy design to the movie about the way that the kids are, and that was something I found very interesting because it's like it's kids with like psychedelic mind powers to allow you to become one of them, but they don't they don't use the mind powers per se to actually kill you outright. They still kill you kind of like how anybody could kill another person, beating you to death, shooting you, stabbing you. It's all standard kills as we would all be accustomed to seeing, but you're possessed into kind of doing this, and then and you become one of them. But leading into that, pregnancy kill that was really crazy is because the wife is very pregnant at the time of this vacation, and the locking eyes with one of the child finds a way to possess the fetus, so to where the child basically murdered the mother from the inside, and that is a very crazy concept.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing I like. That's the main thing why I chose this movie and why I like this movie. Just because yeah, it's definitely like visually not the best movie. It's definitely, you can tell it's in that era of like Italian like horror films where it's like that thick red paint blood that's really really horrible. The acting is not that great. The kids are all kind of weird. And like I said, and the one thing I liked about this movie was because, like I said, is it's this island, and this island is what's doing these kids, because at one point they go off and they're running away and they go into this one like little village that's below, and the mom and there's a bunch of other kids, and those kids are all normal, and the mom's talking to them, and then once the kids from the village come, they bring that whatever makes them killers and turns those kids into more in the killers too. And I like that. And they did, and like they did a remake in like 2012 come out and play. That was, it was cool. I mean, I mean, it definitely changed the concept a little bit of like what how we're doing it, where like anybody on this island is a killer. If you can get the kid off the island, he's all right. But once he's on this island, it's just some kind of like weird like thing. And that could be kind of like with the documentary in the very beginning. Like I said, yeah, it's weird when if you've never seen this movie before and you're watching it for the first time. Yeah, you're like, what the hell? Did I put on the right movie? You're like, pause it
Yeah.
real quick, check and see. Like, did I start the movie right? Like, what the hell's
Dude,
going
even
on?
I was confused for a second. I was
Did
like,
they
how
did
the
they put the
fuck did he
wrong did they put
do
the wrong reel in or something like that? So you're kind of like, yeah, but I kind of guess it kind of explains like the atrocity of kids, and that's what this all this bad stuff and this bad juju and all this kind of stuff has kind of created some kind of unease thing in this island, and that's what these kids are kind of like taking back and taking the land back and killing all the parents and stuff like that. So like I said, I mean, I always loved it. I always think this movie that is just a cool movie. And like I said, it's definitely like you said, the pregnancy thing is pretty neat. Like I said in that very beginning where like, you see the kid trying to shoot him, like, and he just blangs that kid right in the freaking forehead, and they show it, and it's a dead kid. It's the '70s, man. They I mean, even nowadays it's kind of tough to kill a kid. That's the whole premise of the movie. Who can kill a child? Because it's like, you're going around and stuff like that. And it's funny because I watch these movies, and I watch the remake. I even watch movies like Dawn of the Dead, even like 28 Days Later and stuff like that, with these zombies or these virus movies. And they're out there like, your mom just got turned into a zombie, and they're like, I can't kill my mom, blah, 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 blah. And I always told everybody, I was like, man, I love my mother and my family and all, little kids and stuff like that. But I'm sorry, man. If it's like an epidemic and there's a bunch of kids coming after me and they're trying to kill me, Children of the Corn style, these guys kind of style, zombie style, I don't give a fuck who they are, man. This devil will definitely kill a child. When it comes to my survival or the kid's survival, which is like why I like. A lot of people talk about like the 28 weeks later, and I
Yeah.
always like that very beginning of the movie where he was trying to save his wife, And then shit got down. They tried to save his wife and that kid, and he got to a point where it was either save this kid and save his wife and probably get killed in the process, or getting the fuck out of town. And he got the fuck out of town. And that's the thing about it in these movies. You know, when it comes to that, man, it's like, yeah, you want to be a decent person and you want to save somebody and like that, but ultimately you got to save yourself first, because you got to think of number one first. And that's why I love, like, that the whole title, like, who can kill a child. It's like, yeah, I'm like, I feel bad, but you see like it all the time in these movies where they're like, oh my god, no, I can't kill this kid. And then what happens, man? The kid kills him, man. So the corn kid kills him. The kid bites him and turns them into zombies or some shit like that. And it's like, yeah, you gotta get over the mindset of these are little kids that are no longer kids anymore. And that's what I like about this movie. Yeah, it just doesn't throw any punches, man. He's just like fucking, get to the end of the movie, man. He's just fucking pow, pow. He's nailing kids,
Dude,
he's
he
shooting kids.
Tommy gunned the
He's
fucks
fucking
down
he's
a bunch
fucking
of
up
those
kids
kids.
left and right. And then, unfortunately, like the Seacoast guys come. And of course, what they see when they come, they see some dude shooting kids, kill kids and shit. They take him out, and then the kids are like, "Oh yeah, we're saved." And it's like, "Ah, fuck you!" And then we go and kill the kids, and we commandeer your boat. And you
Yep.
know what that's gonna do? Because now they're just gonna bring whatever sickness they have to kids on the main islands and shit like
Yeah.
that. So I always like that. You know what I mean? Like I said, by the time the end of that movie, that dad was like, yeah, fuck these kids, and he's judo chopping everybody. He don't give a shit.
Yeah. No, for sure, man. And it's a cool little, a little like wink and a nod at the end of the movie where if you don't speak Spanish, he basically the one of the leader kids, one of his colleagues is like, well, do you think they're going to have children over on the mainland? And he's like, oh yeah, there's lots of children on the mainland. So it definitely, sets it up for what's looking like it's going to be a very large, murderous children epidemic. So it's definitely a cool little movie for sure. I mean, even just that unsettling scene of like after he like brain splatters that kid in the air vent, the way that he just kind of pie faces him back through the vent, you just hear
Yeah.
his corpse just hit the ground on the other side of the wall. You don't even see it. You just hear like clunk, and it's just like, damn. But at the same time, yeah, better him than me. He
Well,
pulled
yeah, exactly.
he
Because, like,
pulled the gun on me first.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you see, like in the movie, at one point, like, the mom and they're talking. They're like, "What's going on?" Like, "Oh, there's an old man. This little girl's gonna come over and help him out." Like, "Oh, that's nice and sweet." Yeah, until she takes a fucking oar to his head and beats the living shit out of him. And they're like, "Oh shit, what the hell?" Like,
Yeah,
she's over here laughing about it. Like the kids are all like, hee hee hee, having fun the whole entire time. There's always like weird ass, like they're singing songs in the background. There's always weird kids laughing throughout the movie. It's very like unedgy, like to get you on the edge. You're like, oh shit, man, these little kids, man, they don't even care. And I like it. They probably were just like, when they're filming this, they're like, yeah, kids, just go ahead and beat the shit out of grandpa. He can take it.
seriously, absolutely. So as we go into the obituaries for this one, Devil, my friend, how do you look at who can kill a child slash Island of the Damned?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, I mean, it's never going to be anybody's cup of tea as far as it comes to movies. The only reason why, like I said, there's a couple reasons why I truly love this movie. One, it's inventive. There was never really anything like that, like beforehand. I mean, I like the fact that it's just kind of old school, like 70s kind of guerrilla style filming, and it's very low budget. Like I said, it's got that, like we said, it has that 70s like freaking can of paint blood everywhere and crazy shit like that. But that's the thing about like,
That Dario blood.
yeah, that guy's got that Dario blood, man. It's just like, and like I said, the acting throughout the whole time, even the kid, even like I said, even when the kids get menacing, you got to realize this was made in 76 when this came out. So like, you think of like, when we think of these killer kid movies and we think of like Showing the Corn and the graphicness of that movie, and or like these movies that are coming out now where kids are like ripping people apart and ripping them open. Yeah, they didn't really do that kind of stuff. So at the time, this was like super controversial as far as that. And then, like I said, adding in that extra like grossness of realness with the documentary kind of stuff is, it's like kind of I felt like they did it just to kind of get you kind of disturbed and kind of like mortally like ugh, kind of like the whole entire time. But yeah, then again, like I said, yeah, this movie is not gonna like when you're watching it, it's not gonna win any awards. It's not gonna be people's best movie. They're not gonna go around and say like, "What's the greatest movie you've ever seen in your entire life?" And no one's gonna say Who Can Kill a Child, even if you say with killer kids movies, this is still not going to be on the top of the list. But there's a asterisk for it that if you're going to say like Children of the Corn and Village of the Damned and some of these other movies and stuff like that that have come out with these killer kid movies and stuff like that, even like things like Chucky or anything like that, just anything that has to do with like small kids taking out people and stuff like that, a lot of them use this movie as a reference and stuff like that. I mean, it influenced a lot of people on how they want to do these movies. So that's why I love the movie because it's very, like I said, even if the directors or the actors like haven't even came out and said anything about it, you can just tell. And like I said, with some of those scenes of like Children of the Corn, you watch those scenes, watch that movie now, and then watch this movie. You can see a lot. Like I said, there's a lot of similarities of like how they were going into it. They went into the place, they went into the food place, they went into this, they went into this building and that building, and just like the little nuances of like that. That's why, as I said, that's why I've always thought that. I always thought it was a cool movie. Like I said, just because it's a cool child, cool title. Who can kill a child? Like I said, they weren't afraid back in the '70s to shoot a little kid on right on screen and stuff like that, and make these judo chop kids and stuff like that. The pregnancy stuff like that. They weren't afraid to push a little bit of boundaries of stuff that was coming out in the '70s, especially with that kind of topic. So I mean, as I said, I mean, as far as like the movie wise, yeah, it's not the greatest movie. I mean, I would love to give this movie like a 9 or a 10 or even like an 8 or something like that, but realistically, yeah, it's not the greatest movie in the entire world. But like I said, if you look at it for like what it did for the time period that it was in, and like the potential of like you know basically making other films that are just going to do a little bit of take a little bit of this or take a little bit of that movie and stuff like that, it's definitely still on people who have seen it will always remember it. That's what I said. It's a movie that like I said, you watch it, you'll remember it from ever. You might, like I said, it might not be the best movie you've seen or the worst movie you've seen, but you'll still remember this movie just because it's such a crazy movie, especially for its time period. So for me, I gotta give it a 7 just because it, like I said, I like it. Like I said, I mean, the Fangs, maybe a little bit better, if you can watch it, subtitled and stuff like that, so you can kind of understand a little bit more of the subtext of it. But overall, like I said, it's always been one of those movies that kind of stuck in my head. So yeah, definitely a 7.0.
I get you, bud. So we're going to kind of meet in the middle on this one, which is going to kind of give us a bit of a tie when it comes to this. But I kind of feel like I'm sort of with you a little bit on how we kind of swing the needle. So it's a 6 for me. Again, it didn't quite grip me like that, but I appreciated the concepts, the ideas, the treading water that's never really been treaded before. So ultimately, it lands in the middle at a 6.5 again, just like The Brood does. But you do have a lot of key points of unsettled, untapped real potential and going places. While I do think the overall design of The Brood is probably a slightly better movie than Who Can Kill a Child, doesn't necessarily mean that the interjection of real documentary footage showing the plight of children leading into kind of this revenge of the children style mixed with murder on both accounts, also with the perception of what you think is going on, which you covered before we got the obituaries. In this guy's fighting for his life against a bunch of people who are clearly out to do him harm, but the perception of people showing up at the wrong time or too late in the situation makes it look like this guy is just bludgeoning children, when in reality, the children are basically bludgeoning him. But that's not what comes across. So, for the sake of like introducing something where the Brood is a slightly more traditional concept of like mutants, mutants mixed with aliens type of things. And again, the birthing of the way that the children are birthed and their cliffhanger of is Candy one of them or going to take over for her mother potentially is a very good ending design and very, very Cronenberg. There is just something about the back and forth nature of like very kind of pro choice versus pro life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for yeah, for definitely for sure. You know what I mean. So yeah, it gets to that. It gets to that. You know, where like I said, when it boils down, you know, the 6.5 for both movies. Yeah, I mean, I definitely got to say, like, if the Fangs, if you're gonna go by, you know, what is a better movie in general terms, well, yeah, I mean, the Cronenberg film is gonna be a little bit better of a film because it's more of your traditional, like you said, more traditional kind of film. But then again, like I said, you know, when it comes to, like I said, when it goes to the Cronenberg, you know, most people are gonna, you know, are gonna be like, you know, like you said, The Fly and all these films, all these other films are gonna be like the ones that people are gonna talk about. Where like if you're talking about Killer Kids and stuff like that, I mean, I'm not saying that The Brood isn't put up in conversations,
Yeah,
but I kind of feel like people who have at least seen Who Can Kill a Child will talk about that. If you were like, hey man, you know, let's talk about killer kid movies from like the, you know, mid 70s or late, you know, late 70s and stuff like that. Who Can Kill a Child is definitely going to be up there as far as people talking about it. Like I said, not necessarily for like we said for the movie aspect of it, just for like the visuals of it, like what they did in the movie, the fact that they pulled a lot of those punches and they did a lot of stuff that was considered, you know, even nowadays is considered taboo and you're not
yeah,
supposed to do and stuff like that.
for
They
sure.
have no problem with it. So like I said, and like I said, with that, with that, you know, bringing on the newer age killer movies, like I said, like, you know, with like with the Children of the Corn and all that kind of stuff, where you can kind of see a little bit of that old school references to Who Killed a Child. So I think, I mean, like I said, with both of them being 6.5, I mean, I know I'm always gonna try to push for the Devil movie, but I kind of feel like, you know. Yeah, like I said, I just think that in a world, like I said, The Brood is probably going to be a little bit more of like on people's radar because it's a Cronenberg film, and you're like, oh man, I love these movies. Oh, I'm gonna go check out some of his older stuff. So I think it's gonna be on people's radar a little bit more. But I
Yeah.
feel like people would probably, yeah, like I said, in general, you know, horror fans and people who have made horror films, who wrote horror films, directed horror films, would probably maybe lean towards Who Can Kill a Child as far as like being a little bit more influential
Yeah.
than that Cronenberg film.
No, for sure, Devil, and I can definitely meet you on that one for sure. Because when it does come to the topic per se, the specific title of this showdown is it's a little bit clearer to where these are definitely killer children versus childish mutant aliens kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
it definitely is something to be spoken for that. And while yes, Cronenberg is established and people know that style, and yes, they are going to be like, oh, yay for Cronenberg. There's just so much more to be said about a movie that you're going to remember in a specific category that also is a catalyst for taking the genre in a specific direction and possibly even improving it and really tapping into that settled nature. So Fangs and Infernos, that's the way it's going to be. While they match up at a 6.5 based on our personal opinions of the two films, we are going to give victory to the devil when it comes to our Killer Kid showdowns, as Who Can Kill a Child is going to take out the mutant children of our beloved vampires, the Brood. So yes, victory to the devil. That is the way it is going to be here on this showdown episode of our Killer Kids. As always, we want to give so much love and support to our dearly beloveds, Mark and Lizzie from Rock and Horror, the only place that you can get Vampire and Devil merch. So at rockandhorror.com, under the Vampire and Devil collab, make sure that you get your shopping on so you can look oh so fresh, oh so clean, and oh so devilish. But also make sure that you're checking out our friends. Not only is the devil quite hot and beloved, we have got our friends at Coney Island Saucery with all of their great, great hot sauces with the Vampire and Devil podcast, you know, discount code of Vampire and Devil. Our friends at Twisted Vines for creepy decor, as it's currently Summerween, making its way towards Halloween. And then, of course, we love other hot things and tasty herbals. So don't forget about our friends in Brutalities for all the new stuff that they've got coming out. Their collabs with Wednesday 13, as well as new things that they've been announcing. They've always got stuff going on. And if you feel you need to lay your head down for a little while, don't forget our friend Chris at Buffalo Bill's, bed and breakfast house up in Perryopolis, Pennsylvania. The same house that they shot Silence of the Lambs in for Buffalo Bill. But that's the way that it's going to be, Fangs and Infernos. Again, victory to the devil in Killer Kid Showdown. Horns up. Fangs out. Devil, my friend, I think it's time that we spill the tea. Brutalities. Vampire and Devil podcast couldn't be more excited, more humbled to let you all know that we have partnered with very dear friends of ours for a long time in Brutalities. And there's so much great stuff, so many flavors, so much to enjoy, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about it. Isn't that right there, my friend?
Oh yeah, we like it hot. Of course the Inferno likes it hot. Do you like the hot tea? Well, you might as well get some brutality. Yeah, horror movies, puns, rock and roll, brutality's got it all.
Absolutely. When it comes to the vampire, you know that he's going to absolutely gravitate towards that Nosferatu or that Nosferatu brew. Absolutely a favorite of mine. And we got to show a little bit love to, by all means, the biggest franchise in horror right now. That would be Terrifier. So Brutalities has brought you Chairifier. But that's just from the vampire. The devil has some favorites of his own.
Oh yeah, do you like the movie Pumpkinhead? Well, how about a little pumpkin bread for your throat holes? And like I said, with the rock and roll fans and the horror fans, Wednesday 13 fans, do you like Wednesday 13 and tea? How about a couple of those? With the Summertime Suicide and a couple other ones too. So if you like Wednesday 13 and you like the tea and you like the brutalities, go to the website.
Absolutely. And so, of course, we like to look out for those that look out for us. We love you, Fangs. We love you, Infernos. But as a courtesy from Brutalities to be bestowed on you, we have that Vampire and Devil coupon code, don't we, my friend?
Oh, yeah. You want to save a little dough, little cheddar, maybe buy some more shit? Go on the line, Brutalities, type in Vampire and Devil, and you get 10% off your order. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So it's getting into the chilly weather. People need to warm their bones. They need to warm what little skin they may or may not have. But Brutalities is the way to get it done. So that's the way it's going to be because Vampire and Devil said so. Horns up, fangs out for Brutalities. All right, Fangs and Infernos, got a brand new coffin nails here for you. Let's keep it current. Let's talk a little bit about 2025's The Kiss of a Vampire. It's from Poverty Road Films. Now, here's the thing. With a title like that, you kind of think I know what I was getting into. But here's the thing. As all of you know, I'm a really big fan of Full Moon. I'm a fan of Troma. I like low-budget film production companies. I think they're cool. I think they have a lot to offer. I think these guys do too. Now, here's the thing when it comes to the movie. Overall, I think it was a pretty cool story. I didn't hate it. It worked. Basically this guy is a very well-known doctor. That's his cover. He's a 1,200-year-old vampire that basically runs roughshod over his town. He and his fiance, they just got married. That's how the movie starts out. So she's basically now living in this more secluded, like foresty, wooded village. And, she's just kind of getting used to the environment while he still kind of does his thing, for lack of a better term, behind her back. Now, here's the thing, overall, there seems to be love being shared. He seems to, have her best interests in mind and things like that. But the other thing about this movie is, all of you will know this about me, is that I'm very, very particular when it comes to vampiric lore. And one of the biggest problems I had with this movie is the majority of the movie, the main vampire guy is literally just out in the sunlight, just walking around. There's scenes where he wakes up from his night's sleep with the sun just coming in on the window, just right on top of him. And so much stuff like that. And look, if there's going to be holes in your film when it comes to vampiric lore, I'm not going to instantly hang you for it, but I need you to show your work. You got to kind of show in the course of the movie why you're going this route and why you're ignoring this, that, or the other thing. But other than that, it's an okay movie. I mean, the effects were interesting enough. I mean, there was AI, CGI, stuff spliced in when it came to like certain like scenes that I thought was kind of interesting, kind of cool. But when it came to like blood splatter, the overall bites were okay. What you kind of show after the kill, that kind of worked. But when it came to like other stuff, it was really bizarre. Like heavy blood for what appeared no reason. Blood shooting up at times, almost like a windshield wiper. Very, very bizarre. But overall, it's interesting enough. It's fun. It's not going to get a super high score for me because, again, that when it comes to vampiric lore, when I feel you fuck it up, I'm going to hold you accountable for it. So The Kiss of a Vampire, it's going to get a 4.5. Ghouls and Fangs. Vampire and the Devil here. We got a little question for you. Devil, there's kind of a triangle, a three-headed monster per se, when it comes to Baltimore, that I don't think people necessarily realize. We've got Edgar Allan Poe, we've got John Waters, but what else do we have?
We got the Ouija boards, oh yeah.
Absolutely. Starting in Baltimore way back in the day, a lot of people are unfamiliar with William Fuld and Elijah Bond, who patented, and the birth of the Ouija board was right here in Baltimore. Devil and Vampire coming at you from the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore, courtesy of our friend John Kozik, who invited us out to check it out and shoot a little conversation action to let you guys all know. Of course, you've seen on our socials that we have partnered with both museums, and we couldn't be more appreciative to John for that opportunity. So whenever you're here in Baltimore, of course, right attached to the Bizarre Oddity Shop off of the Avenue, you have Witchboard Museum Baltimore. And when you're in Witch City, USA, up in Salem, Massachusetts, that's when you get to visit the Salem Witchboard Museum.
Oh yeah, if you want to see some cool stuff, see some cool boards, get some cool history, go see our boy John. Man, that guy is really awesome, man. That dude knows his boards, he knows his history, he's about preserving the society of witch boards and the talking boards and all that goodness. And we love it. We love the fact that, they were gonna bring in this museum here in Baltimore, so all the Baltimore fans or all your East Coast fans or maybe not as far away, going up to Salem, come out to Baltimore and check it out, you know what I mean? Because there's some cool stuff in this museum, and you gotta check it out, because the devil and the vampire said so.
That is facts right there, my friend. Again, absolutely attached to the Bizarre Oddities shop in the Avenue in Hamden for the Baltimore established Witchboard Museum, or off of Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts for the Salem Witchboard Museum. Horns up, fangs out.